So take a look at Perek Chav Beis. Perek Chav Beis, Pasuk Gimel. And the first thing is over here, we're just speaking about this in our other shir. The Torah says like this, very nogay, it says this applies very much to our Gemara, on page 1048. Page 1048. So it says, Lo sira es shor achicha o eseyo nidachim v'salamta mehem. You must not see his ox or his sheep wandering and then you ignore it. Hashev teshivim la'achicha. You must give it back. So here we have what we were speaking about before, the idea of returning lost objects. Right? Here we go, returning lost objects. Shalom Aleichem, how are you? When you have to return the idea of returning lost objects. So the secular idea of finders, keepers, losers, weepers is not a Torah value. Finders, keepers, losers, weepers. That's my lucky day, and it's your rough day. Too bad. You know, that's not what the Torah says. You got to give back lost objects. But there are obviously rules and halachas, and where you find it, how you found it, what you found. Was it money? Does it have a sign on it? Is it something that could be returned? I'm not going to go into all the details, but the attitude of the Torah is that if you could return it, you should. Somebody lost it, and I think it was Rav Pam, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe we could turn on a little bit more air. Just get a little more air in here. Thank you, Mayor. Okay, thank you. Rav Pam, who was the Rosh Yeshiva of Torah V'das, so his son once found a significant sum of money. We're talking about back in the 50s, 60s, or whenever it was. His son found a significant sum of money, which was enough apparently to buy a bicycle. Enough to buy a bicycle. So his son came home. And it was money, and the halacha is by money. If you find money and the money doesn't have any marking on it, generally you could keep it. So he asked his father if he's allowed to keep the money. Rav Pam said yes, and he was happy. He wanted to go buy a bicycle. So Rav Pam said to him, I don't want you to buy the bicycle yet. He made him wait 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, he said, now you can buy the bicycle. So he said to him, okay, why did you make me wait? So Rav Pam said, look, you found a significant sum of money, and the money is yours. But realize that the guy who lost the money is probably very upset. How can you go and enjoy that money when there's somebody else who's upset? So he said to him, and what changed in 2 weeks? He says, but 2 weeks, that person's got a new hassle with his wife. He probably forgot about that one. He's got a different hassle. So now you could go, by 2 weeks, that's what happens. Like, you have a hassle, something, you lost something. Okay, but 2 weeks later, you forgot about it. Maybe something good happened. What do you call it? It could be anything. Your mother-in-law could come for a visit, right? But 2 weeks later, she'll leave. So something could happen that's a change of circumstances. So at the end of the day, that was a joke, by the way. At the end of the day, there's a certain sensitivity that's required here. So there's a medrash. There's a very interesting medrash. The medrash says, by the way, I was in university. In university, I lost a wallet, and I couldn't find my wallet. I had my driver's license there and it had a picture on it. And I was one of the only guys and it was a small commuter school, college, and I was one of the only guys there wearing a yarmulke. I had a nice knitted white yarmulke. And every day a different one. And I was pretty easily identifiable for various reasons. And I couldn't find my wallet. And I had my picture on my driver's license. I was trying to think, where could it possibly be? And then I realized maybe it was in the bathroom. I had gone to the bathroom, maybe it fell out of my pants in the bathroom or something. So I go to the bathroom, I go to the stall, and sure enough, there it was sitting on the paper dispenser. Right, somebody had been good enough to pick it up and put it on the paper dispenser, and I opened it up, and there's my wallet. Everything was there except the $5. I had $5, and the $5 was missing. So I guess whoever found it felt he's a tzaddik for at least not flushing it down the toilet. He left it there for me in the bathroom, minus the $5. That sort of thing. So by us, you find a wallet. Somebody lost it when they did they had the Siyum HaShas. That when they completed the Shas, and they made a celebration at Madison Square Garden. There are 20,000 Jews there celebrating that they completed the Shas. So there was a policeman there, a non-Jewish policeman. He said to another, he said, "Darn it, I lost my wallet." So the other policeman said to him, "Don't worry about it, Frank. With this crowd, you're going to get it back." And sure enough, one of the frum Jews had found it. They found the wallet, and he gave it back to the cop. Right now, could you imagine a hockey game at Madison Square Garden where you lose your wallet? Right? Can you imagine losing your anything at Madison Square Garden and getting it back? You know, this was a crowd full of frum Jews, so the guy actually got it back. I knew somebody went to New York. Somebody went there. I remember back in the day, back in high school, somebody went to New York and he got his wallet nipped within about 10 minutes of getting to New York. And he walked up to a cop. He said, "Hey, you know, somebody just stole my wallet." And the cop said, "Welcome to New York." You know, that was your welcome. What do you call it? So the Torah is telling you, you know, listen, you know, just grab it and take it. There are certain times where you're allowed to take. We'll see about grabbing and taking in a second. Certain times you're allowed to. But in general, there's an idea of at least let's see if there's an obligation to return it. Okay, number one. Number two, by the way, I was talking about bicycles. The guys at the shear once bought me a bottle of Blue Label. You know how much Blue Label costs? A big bottle of Blue Label, about $200. At the time, it was about $200. The shekel was 4 to 1, 4.5 to the dollar. So I come home with this bottle of Blue Label. Oh, by the way, that's a hint, guys. I come home with this bottle of Blue Label, a brand new bottle of Blue Label, and my wife says to me, "I don't want you to open it." So I said, "Why not?" She said, "Well, first of all, you're not such a connoisseur of wine, of whiskey, which I'm not. You know, but Blue Label I had tasted once before, and it was actually pretty good. It's very smooth, no pain." So my wife said to me, "Listen, you're not such a connoisseur of whiskey that you need to open a $200 bottle of whiskey, number one. And number two, there's only a month till Pesach, and it's chametz. I don't want the chametz in the house." I said, "Listen, concern number two won't be a concern. That I guarantee you. It's going to be gone by Pesach. That won't be a concern." And so I didn't, but the first concern, well, I was thinking about, should I open this or not? So I'm thinking about this bottle. I think it took me 2 or 3 days till I finally succumbed. But my sons, my older son was 10 and my younger son was 7 at the time. So I opened up, I showed them this bottle. I said, "Guys, I want to show you something. This bottle of whiskey cost 900 shekels. So my older son looks at me and goes, 900 shekels? I could get 2 bicycles for that kind of money." I said, "Yeah, but this isn't about you, kid. This is about me. How did you get into the picture here?" Then I pull out, they open it up, and you open it up, and there's a little booklet in it. You know, like the story of my hangover. There's a little booklet of how they make the whiskey. So they got a picture of these guys in Scotland from the distillery, a whole bunch of guys with beards. So my younger son takes a look and he goes, "Daddy, are they tzaddikim?" I said, somehow I don't think so. You know, these guys with beards, you know, sitting at the distillery. So there's a medrash that says, I drank it, by the way. I knocked it off there. There was no concern for Pesach. It was good. The medrash says that there was a queen who lost some sort of bracelet or a necklace, whatever it was, some very valuable, a Roman queen, lost some sort of necklace. So she put out a public announcement. Anybody who finds it and returns it within 30 days is going to be handsomely rewarded. If you found it and don't return it within 30 days, you're going to be punished. You're going to be executed. So there was one of the Chachamim named Rabbi Shmuel ben Susrati. The Medrash says, Rabbi Shmuel ben Susrati found this bracelet. And on day 31, he brought it back to the queen. So the queen said, "Well, thank you very much. Maybe you didn't know there was an announcement that when did you find it? You just found it today?" He goes, No, I found it a few weeks ago. She said, "Well, maybe you don't, there was an announcement that if you don't return it within 30 days, you know." He said, "I found it 31 days ago. He said, "You didn't hear the announcement?" He said, "I heard the announcement." "Maybe you didn't understand." "I understood." She said, "Well, why are you returning it on day 31? He says, "If I would have returned it within the 30 days, you would have thought that I'm returning it because I'm intimidated by you. I wanted you to know that I'm returning it because this is what I should do, what Hashem wants me to do, not because it's what you want me to do." And of course he rewarded him. Everybody lived happily ever after. I wouldn't risk it, but that's what he did, and he was rewarded. So that's what the Torah says. So that's the first rule over here, and the attitude has to be that there's somebody on the receiving end. This is another one of many laws in the Torah that we are not opportunists. So you're bad luck, and there are certain times in life where certain people, you know, a guy buys something, let's say somebody changes their mind. Let's say you're selling something, guy changes his mind, by letter of law, you don't have to give him back his money. The guy says, you know what, I changed my mind, do you mind? You could go beyond the letter of the law. Not only we could go, we are often expected to go beyond the letter of the law to be decent. That's what the Torah wants over here. Okay, that's idea number one. Idea number two is very apropos for you'll see how the Torah is timeless. Take a look at Pasuk Hey, page 1050. Lo yeh kli gever al isha. A man's implement should not be on a woman. Meaning a man's clothing. How does he do it? Male garb. Okay. Al isha. V'lo yilbash gever simlas isha. A man shouldn't. A woman shouldn't wear a man's garb. V'lo yilbash gever simlas isha. A man should not wear woman's garb. Not marry woman's garb. He shouldn't wear woman's garb. Ki tovas Hashem Elokecha kol osela. It's an abomination. What do they call it nowadays? Cross-gender. What do they call it? Cross-gendering or gender. What are those stores that sell gender-neutral clothing or whatever it is, and all the other weird stuff that happens in the world today? And what's wrong with it? Now take a look at Rashi. Says Rashi, Lo yeh kli gever. If you find Rashi, it's the right column, the third line from the top. Lo yeh kli gever al isha. Says Rashi. Everybody see that? You find it? Please show the person next to you. Lo yeh kli gever al isha. For what purpose? Shetehei dome leish. That she should look like a man. Kidei shetelech mein anoshim. That way she could circulate among males. She'ein zu elo shem niyuf. It's for the purpose of immorality. She's trying to infiltrate the male dormitory. V'lo yilbash gever simlas isha bein anoshim. Leishe bein anoshim. A man shouldn't wear women's clothing to be among the women. Now, included davar acher, says Rashi, shelo yasir seyar ha'erva v'seir shel beis ha'shechi. Why? Ki tovas, the Torah says this brings, the only thing forbidden is clothing that leads to abominable behavior, which is immorality. So first of all, included in this, before we even get to included in the prohibition is that a man is not allowed to wear or do anything that is unique to women, and a woman is not allowed to do or wear anything that is unique to men. So for example, a man wouldn't be allowed to walk around with a purse, and a woman would not be allowed to walk around with pants, for tznius reasons as well. A woman is also not allowed to carry a weapon. Boy. What? Boy. Why? Because weapons are unique to men. A woman could carry a purse, and a woman could carry a baking, a roller pin. But a woman can't carry a machine gun. A machine gun is something that is unique to women. Why? Because I'm telling you, because the Torah says that I'm just read you a pasuk. The Torah says what's unique to men, what is meant to be done by men and worn by men and carried by men, is not something a woman should be using. And what's unique to women is not for men. The Torah says because it's usually it's a subcategory of the clothing. Now, the extension of this, obviously a woman who's living in a dangerous area would be able to carry something if she needs it for self-defense, if it's life-threatening. So what's that? So we have women IDF soldiers. Correct, and that's one of the IDF also does 1,000 abortions a year. The IDF is not unfortunately, not a halachically obedient army. The IDF does a lot of things. As a matter of fact, there was an Israeli general a few years back who was speaking, a retired general who was speaking at Israeli high school, and he said, guys, he said to the graduating class of the high school, he said, men, boys, we look forward to seeing you in the Army very soon. And he said, and girls, we want to see you in the Army soon because we need to keep up the morale for the boys, like that. And there was an outcry in the country, and how dare you imply that that's the reason the girls are in the Army, and so on and so forth, but we all know the truth. And therefore, the Torah says, it's a good question you're asking, but unfortunately the IDF is not a halachically, it does not follow halacha. Now, what's underlying this, once we brought it up, let's get some clarity here. Before we get to anything, let's talk about the Army for just 1 second. We're not anti-Army per se. We are pro-halacha. One of the things in a Torah world there is no such thing. And what was the objection when they in the founding of the country? There was a major objection when they wanted to to induct women into the army, into the Israeli army. Right, so the greatest leaders of the generation, the Chazon Ish or the Chibiner Rav, all the Gedolei Yisrael said no girls are allowed to go. They have to give up their life not to go to the army. That was what the poskim said. The idea behind it is like this: in a Torah world, in a frum world, in the Torah world, there's no such thing as a girl living on her own. A girl is raised by her father, and she then goes from her father's home to her husband's home. Ideally, it doesn't mean not all girls get married. If they don't get married, it's a problem. But in the ideal flow is she stays under her father's jurisdiction, then she goes to her husband's jurisdiction. There is no situation where a girl is put under another man's jurisdiction. The substitution, you see what happens is if a girl goes to the army, what often happens is, and not just the Israeli army, any army, girls working in the army, and then the guy gives her an order, and he says, well, do this, and that's an order, and I hate to have you court-martialed. Then he can work on her, lay on a guilt trip, whatever it is, they're easily manipulatable, and we know that. And you don't put her in a situation where she is under another man's jurisdiction, unless it's her father or her husband, because it always inevitably leads to immorality. And if you start out with a given, I'd say a lot of things in life depend on what your point of departure is. If your point of departure is that immorality is unacceptable, so then you approach life a certain way. If your point of departure is immorality is perfectly acceptable, so then none of this applies to you. So it depends if you're coming at it from a Torah perspective or you're coming at it from a secular perspective. Whenever I'm asked the question, like, what's wrong with driving on Shabbos? Let's say something else. What's wrong with driving on Shabbos? My response is, do you mean from a secular perspective or from a Torah perspective? What's wrong with women going to the army? Do you mean from a secular perspective or from a Torah perspective? Right? From a secular perspective, there's absolutely nothing wrong. Right. That's why they do it. From a what's that?
They can kill efficiently just as a man can.
Yeah, from a secular perspective, but there's nothing wrong with it because secular, there's nothing wrong with anything. From a secular perspective, you could do anything you want and make any rules you want. You may face consequences, but from a secular perspective, you can make up the rules as you go along. And from a Torah perspective, there's a lot wrong with it because it leads to immorality. And immorality, from a Torah perspective, premarital sex or any sort of immorality, what the Torah says, we from a Torah perspective, it's unacceptable. So we do everything.
The main Torah reason is premarital sex and sexual immorality.
Immorality in general. Immorality.
Under the category of immorality, what other reasons other than sexual immorality?
We don't need much more. It's like asking what's wrong with jumping out of a 19th-story window other than going splat. Other than that, what's wrong with it? So the Torah, it depends what your point of departure is. It always depends on what your point. So if you don't agree with that point of departure, so now you're right. That person can do whatever they want. But for somebody who is looking at it from a Torah perspective, there are the predictable and inevitable problems that result. So the Torah here is saying that when there is cross-gender, any sort of cross-gendering is going to lead almost inevitably to immorality. That's the Torah's approach. Now, included in the prohibition, just by the letter of law, a man is not allowed to do anything that is unique to women. For example, shaving his body. A man's not allowed to shave any hair except his facial hair. A man's not allowed to use perfume. He can use a cologne that's designated for men, but he cannot use a perfume designated. A man's not allowed to walk around with a purse. He can walk around with a what do you call it, a pouch or whatever a man wants to walk around. But if it's something that is identifiably unique to women, distinct for women, that a man's allowed to do. The same way the Torah views a weapon as a man's implement, and therefore a woman is not allowed to carry a weapon. That's a Torah prohibition. Besides what it could lead to putting women in the army, even a woman who's not in the army is not allowed to be a security guard if she needs to carry a weapon because of what do you call it? She's not allowed to carry man's clothing. That's a law right here in the Torah. Then you have the incident. I'll get to you in 1 second. There's the famous incident of Sisera, who was running away when Devorah and Barak were fighting against the Philistines, and what do you call it? Sisera, the general, was running away, and he ran into the tent. There was a woman named Yael, and he ran into her tent, and she got him. She got him thirsty. She gave him some cheese and some wine and put him to sleep. And then she took a tent peg and she put the tent peg through his skull, through his temple to kill him. So the
water was a special flavored milk that she gave.
I seem to remember it was wine. If it was special flavored milk, that's fine too. Whatever it was, she put him to sleep, and then she took the tent peg and she put it through his temple to kill him. So imagine, why did she use the tent peg? Why not use a sword? Because a sword is a male weapon. It's not something that she's allowed to use. Now, had she not been able to kill him efficiently with the, what do you call it, she would have been able. A tent peg is not used for killing. It's not a male weapon. Most men don't walk around with tent pegs trying to kill people. But a what do you call it? That's what what's wrong?
Why are you worried about what you're killing with if you're killing?
You're killing because the killing was necessary. The killing was necessary. It's a good question. But to use a man's sword isn't necessary. That's a weapon. She was allowed to kill him. It was a mitzvah to kill him. The fact that it's a mitzvah to kill doesn't mean you have to go and use something else if it could be done. Had there been nothing else available, she would have been able to use, what do you call it? They'd take a couple of dish towels and strangle him. Right? But whatever it was, you can't use. Yeah. Your name is? Yotam. Yeah.
Isn't killing only associated with males?
Oh, good question. That's what he's asking. Under the circumstances, you're allowed to do so because this was something necessary for the Jewish people. So that was the mitzvah. Excellent question. But the fact that you're allowed to do it doesn't mean that you can go and then not when a person's allowed to do it, then all other laws go out the window. Again, had it not been available, she would have used the sword. But since the tent peg was right there and available and it works, she put it right through his temple. Yeah, and that was what he called. I just hope it wasn't too messy. Yeah.
I have a question. I'm reading the.
Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Abraham. I'm reading the part of Sitzei where that we were looking about lost garments, and it says Mechein Teasei Lo Shmei To. Doesn't Shmei technically mean dress? So in that and.
Simloso means a garment. It also means a garment.
Isn't
Yeah.
it Shmei?
Yeah, simloso means a guy. I know what you're asking. Simloso sounds like give the man back his dress.
Yeah.
Right? No, a good question. No. Simloso means a garment. It's a garment. It's a garment. It doesn't mean in modern Hebrew it refers to a woman's dress. In Torah law it refers to a garment. It's a good question. It's a very good question. Or it could be it was his wife's garment and he doesn't want to have to buy her another one. But the answer is that it's referring to what he called. In any event, I want to make this point clear. I'll tell you. Let me give you another example. One of the things that we always come under attack for is a mechitza in shul, right? You put up a mechitza, the barrier in shul, and we're mistreating the women. The women are behind the mechitza, and they're second-class citizens, right? We've heard. I'm sure you may feel this way, and you've certainly heard this from somebody who's upset about it. Now, what's the response to that? The answer is, again, it depends on your point of departure. If you begin with your given is men and women are allowed and should be sitting together in a shul, so then you're right. We're mistreating women, putting them behind a wall. If your given is that there's a halacha, men and women are not allowed to sit together in a shul, and if we don't have a mechitza, the women won't even be allowed in the shul at all. By having a mechitza, we're able to bring the women closer, because the mechitza allows them into the shul. Without a mechitza, they can't even enter. So it depends what your point of departure is. If you're looking at it from a secular point of view, then you're absolutely right. We're mistreating the women. If you're looking at it from a Torah point of view, and the Torah point of view says, well, there's laws, there are halachas, and one of the halachas you can't sit mixed. So what's the alternative? The alternative, the women can't be in the shul at all. So we do a favor, we bring in a mechitza, and that way the women are allowed in, so that the mechitza brings you closer, right? If you have a door on the cockpit of an airplane, I think it's unfair. Why should there be a door on the cockpit of an airplane that separates me from the pilot? Well, the answer is that if there isn't a door on the cockpit, then you're not going anywhere. Because the law is that you can't fly the plane unless their cockpit door is closed and locked. So do you want the door locked or you don't want it? Well, it's unfair. So then you get to stay on the ground. So it depends what your point of departure is. No pun intended. Depends what your point of departure is. So at the end of the day, we're looking at things from a Torah perspective here. If somebody challenges the Torah perspective from a secular perspective, So the question is invalid. From a secular, you can basically do whatever you want. A secular perspective, do whatever you want as long as you don't get caught. And if you do get caught, you pay the consequences. That's all. But we're talking from the Torah perspective. And the Torah perspective starts from a given point of departure. The given point of departure is halacha. Yeah, Meir, go ahead.
I'm just curious about which are the garments and perhaps we know belong to, besides of the sword.
A dress, any skirt. A man's not allowed to wear a skirt, except if you're in Scotland and you wear a kilt. So a kilt, by the way, which is not made like a dress. A kilt is a wraparound. It wraps around. It's a lot of material up here, and it wraps around. In Scotland, for a man to wear a kilt is not a problem because everybody knows that's a man's garment. To wear a kilt on the streets of Israel, I'd be hesitant, right? I was actually once a guy from the yeshiva. There was a guy from Ohr Somayach who got married, a guy from England, and a guy from the UK. He's actually from Scotland. So I went to the wedding, and as I walked in, you know, there's always a mechitza at a frum wedding. There's always a mechitza. As I walked in, I headed to what I thought was the men's side of the mechitza. And I looked up and I saw guys with skirts. I saw skirts. So my first look, like, whoa, why are there skirts on the men's side of the mechitza? Then I took a second look. It turned out these were guys from Scotland, his friends and family from Scotland, and they were wearing these kilts, which apparently are that's considered very fancy. There's a dress, and then I looked closer and I saw that in the kilt there's a whole style over there. They actually tuck into the sock. They tuck a dagger into the, like you wear a tie clip, right? They put a dagger into the sock. That's part of the uniform because the kilts began with a certain unit in the Scottish Army, who was a very fierce unit in the Scottish Army, and one of the things they carried with them was a dagger, not a tie clip. So these guys were wearing these kilts at the wedding, and you know, it's kind of thing. It's a little bit shocked to see men running around in skirts, but they're not skirts; they're kilts. So in Scotland, it was certainly okay. In Israel, it might be something, might be in the category of Mari sign that you'd have to ask a posek. I don't know. So that would be okay. Now, for example, something that looks like, you know, it just looks feminish. You know, it's kind of pink with flowers and that sort of thing. You know, there are certain things that are clearly unique to women. You know that there are poskim, there's actually in halacha that a man should not preen himself in a mirror. A man doesn't look in a mirror. Now, the poskim, contemporary poskim, said we could look in a mirror today because mirrors are so widespread. The old days, mirrors were not mass produced. You took a piece of glass, you stained it if you could, and who did you give it to? You gave it to a woman so that she could look at herself in a mirror. Men, it was considered inappropriate. And today, even to this day, to look in a mirror, you see, women have this thing that opens up almost hexagonally, right? It's called, they shamelessly call it a vanity kit, right? Now, a man who's admiring himself in a mirror, if a man's looking in a mirror and he's, you know, Hashem did a pretty good job here, you know, and you're looking at, and somebody walks into the room, you become self-conscious, don't you? You guys like, oh, do I have something in my eye? And all of a sudden you pretend as if you're looking in the mirror for some reason. Why? Because it's not natural for a man to be so vain about his look, his appearance is not natural. A woman, shamelessly, anytime there's a mirror, if you ever walk into a hotel, in every lobby in a hotel, there are big mirrors, right? Every woman who walks past stops automatically. It's like there's a red light. You know, you're walking, stop, like that. Yeah. If you're ever driving with a female in the car, make sure you have two rear view mirrors because one of them's going to be turned in her direction. Right? She's going to be like, you know, you're looking up to see if that truck behind you, you look up, all of a sudden the mirror's not there. What's happening? You're like, she's like, man. Like, when you give me the mirror, man. That's right. So that's for a woman, that's perfectly acceptable. Any sort of shaving of the legs, the arms, the armpits, anything like that, women can do whatever they want, men not. Besides the prohibition of shaving with a razor, besides shaving with razor and other prohibitions, which we'll see, but the idea of shaving any parts of the body, unless you need it, let's say for surgery. Something for a person, when they have to do surgery, that's to shave the hair around the area so it doesn't become infected. That would be acceptable, but not for aesthetic purposes. I think Olympic swimmers, if I'm not mistaken, Olympic swimmers shave all the hair off their body because it could actually shave off, no pun intended, it could shave off about 1,000th of a second on the speed because of resistance in the water, so they shave it off for that sort of thing. That a person would have to ask a halachic shaila. If you become an Olympic competitor, please see me, because I want to get your autograph. Because first I want to get your autograph, then we'll ask a shaila. But other than that, it's unacceptable. That's what the Torah says over here. Okay, I want to go on to the next mitzvah. In pasuk, the fifth pasuk from the top. But again, what I'm telling you is vital. What I'm telling you is vital because many discussions about Torah and Torah values often ignore the fact that we're looking at it from a certain perspective, from a halachic perspective. We're not applying secular law to Torah law. We're looking at it from a Torah perspective. Somebody wants to know why we only eat kosher. What's wrong with eating non-kosher food? What's wrong with it from a secular perspective apparently is nothing. What's wrong with it from a Torah perspective is that we talk about a God-given law and God said you can't do it. And so you say, yeah, but I don't agree with that law. But we weren't talking about your mindset. We weren't talking about your mindset. We're talking about the God's mindset. And I'm only explaining why God said so. When a person comes along and says individually his opinion, that's his own opinion. That has nothing to do with Torah. Okay? Very important. Now,
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So like some of the, I'm a little confused about some of the specifics of this. Like
I'm not going to go into specifics now. You have to ask a halachic. I don't want to go into all the specifics. Yeah, go ahead.
Like if what is for women and what is for men depends on this society in some ways. Like if shaving a beard is specifically and not shaving the arms is specifically for men. What if a woman has like a medical condition that she grows a beard and she can't
A woman is allowed to shave any parts of her body, first of all. Second of all, societal norms do play a part in certain areas of halacha. Societal norms do play a part. For example, you could have a kibbutz, many kibbutz where the weather is hot, and the men will wear shorts when they go to shul. They wear shorts. If that's the norm in that kibbutz, that's okay. There are other things which are objectively forbidden. For example, a woman is not allowed to wear a garment that goes above the knee. Now, it makes no difference what's happening in the rest of the society. That is an objective prohibition. For example, the laws of non-kosher food doesn't change because the society has decided everybody's going to eat octopus. Doesn't mean that Jews could eat octopus, right? Even if it's the norm in the society. Certain things are objective and certain things are subjective. That you're absolutely correct. In this area, there are certain things that are objective and subjective. There are other things that are objectively prohibited. A woman could shave any hair anywhere on her body. A man cannot. That's an objective halacha. Do you know that there are certain even how you button a shirt? Men's buttons, my button is on the right side. Women's buttons are usually on the left side. For a man to wear a shirt that's got a woman's button on the left side can be problematic because that would be a style that is unique to women. That's just what was it?
I thought Hasidim specifically wear their buttons.
That's because they feel they want to be different from the rest of society, and therefore there's some people who say that that's wrong. You know, there are different opinions over there. Okay, but then I'm just giving you an example of where there's a style. I'm giving you an example of what the styles could be for certain umbrellas, for example. You could tell that the umbrella is clearly designed for a woman, right? I think even cigarettes, looking back, I mean, it may not apply now, but there was something called Virginia Slims. Right? Do you remember Virginia Slims? That was the first cigarette that was made for it. Do you remember the jingle? Right? Remember the jingle? You've come a long way, baby. Right? You remember that? That was the commercial for Virginia Slims, and it could very well be for a man to smoke. Virginia Slims would be problematic. I don't know. I don't know. The bottom line is that if it's designed specifically for a woman, that's what the Torah prohibits. Okay. Now comes the next mitzvah, the next pasuk, is where you find the mother bird. Okay, this is considered one of the most difficult to understand mitzvahs in the Torah. The Torah says like this. It's the fifth line from the top of page 1050. Ki yikare kan sipor lefanecha baderech. When a bird's nest comes, I stumble across a bird's nest, b'chol eitz ala oretz, efrochim beitzim, chicklets or eggs, v'ha'em rovetzes ala efrochim ala beitzim. The mother is hovering over how does the article translate it? The mother is roosting. Oh, okay. Hovering over. Lo sikach ha'em al habanim. Do not take the mother with the children. In other words, like this. In a society nowadays, we get a dozen eggs in a carton, and it's all neatly in what do you call it, pasteurized, homogenized, all de-infecticized and everything. And most people wouldn't just find raw eggs and eat them. We have enough trouble with the eggs that are marketed. Most people aren't going to buy it. But in a society that things were not mass-produced, whatever you could find, you took. And people would take, you got a nice kosher chicken, a nice kosher bird, a nice kosher bird, a dove, a pigeon, whatever it is, and eggs. So you took it, you brought it home. Comes along the Torah and says, don't take the whole thing. You want the eggs, take the eggs. You want the chickens, take the chickens. Don't take the mother and the eggs. Shaleach teshalach esem. You must send away the mother bird. Vesabanim tikarav. Shoo off the mother bird and then take the eggs. Leman yitav loch v'rach. You will benefit and live long. This is considered an easy mitzvah. Why is it an easy mitzvah? Does anybody know? What's the definition in Torah of it? And by the way, I'll give you a hint. A sukkah is also called an easy mitzvah. What's the definition of an easy mitzvah in Torah?
You're already getting a benefit?
You're getting a benefit. It doesn't cost you anything. That's the definition of an easy mitzvah. A sukkah doesn't cost you anything. Nowadays it does. Obviously, you got to go buy. They got sukkahs that probably cost more than homes. But in the old days, a sukkah was you found out to the forest. You took wood and you built yourself. It was all free. You built it. The labor is not counted here when we talk about an easy mitzvah. So here the Torah says you have an easy mitzvah. It's an easy mitzvah because you find this bird. You take this. What do? You send away the mother bird. You take the eggs. This is a mitzvah that applies nowadays. If you see a mother bird, and not only that, the halacha says that even if you don't want the eggs, you should do it anyway. Send away the mother bird, pick up the eggs to make a kinyan and the chicklets, and then put it right back down. I once did this mitzvah. It's not clear when the mitzvah applies. I was living here in Malatoft at 135 on the 5th floor, and one day we see a bird had nested on our balcony. And it gave birth to there were these eggs, and then there were these chicklets. So first I had to ask a halachic authority because it's meant to be in an area that is ownerless. If it's on your property, it doesn't count. So I spoke to a halachic authority. He said I should make the balcony hefker. The balcony is now ownerless, which even then is questionable. He said I should do it anyway, just in case. And then I had a guy stand next to me because I was worried I'd stand a guy next to me with a broom in case this man-eating pigeon would attack me. I was never really good with animals. And I just had him standing there just in case. And I walked over and I just kind of moved the board. As soon as I touched the board, it was under like a board. As soon as I touched the board, the mother bird flew away. And I picked up each one of the chicklets. I was more scared than they were. I picked up each one of the chicklets. I put it right back down. And then I fulfilled the mitzvah. That's the mitzvah of Shiluach HaKen. If you want, you could take them. If they were eggs, you could take them, put in your refrigerator. You go do whatever you want with them. I officially own them, and I put them back down, and eventually they grew up and they flew away. That's what the mitzvah of the Torah is. That's the basic description of the mitzvah. Now, hold on the question for a second. The commentaries explain what's going on here. Why is it that the Torah says don't take the mother bird and just take the chicklets, don't take the mother bird? There are many different mefarshim here. One of the explanations is that this goes back to very much what we were talking about in the mitzvah of returning lost objects. That means if I take the mother bird and I take the chicklets, I'm grabbing up everything for myself. Maybe leave something for other people. Take the eggs, take the chicklets, leave the mother bird so she can produce for others. Not only to think about ourselves. If I take everything, take the mother bird, then I'm going to slaughter the mother bird, take the... What about other people? There are other people in your world too. That's one of the... That's what one of... Hold other questions, bro. That's what one of the Mefarshim says. What Mefarshim says is the idea of not thinking only of ourselves, thinking about others. Another idea the Mefarshim offer, another explanation the Mefarshim offer is, how could you even... Did you ever try to catch a bird? Try catching a bird with your bare hands. Can you catch a pigeon with your bare hands? Very, very difficult. The only thing harder is a mouse. Right? When you walk into the house and your wife says she saw a mouse and you got to go catch this mouse, you got about as much chance of catching a mouse, right? It's one of the worst situations to be in, by the way. I was in Kovel for 7 years. I was only called home twice for an emergency, both times because my wife saw a mouse in the house. And I have a tradition from my father, Olav Shalom, that's an emergency. So I came home, and I remember the first time I came home, my wife was standing outside the door. She said, I'm not going back in there until that thing is out. And I was like, oh, sounds like it might be a good deal over here. Get in there. So, I chased that mouse. I got no chance of chasing it. And then the mistake all husbands make. Then I say to her at a certain point, I'm chasing, you have to say a mouse. And I say, are you sure you, don't do this, gentlemen. I said, are you sure you saw a mouse? They hate that. Maybe it was a spider. I know what a mouse looks like. You're chasing around. So eventually I got what do you call it? I got a live trap. You got a live trap, you put the thing in, and you go to sleep, and the house is pitch black. It's about 1 in the morning. All of a sudden you hear snap like that, and you go in, and he's in that thing. And I took it out. You just empty it out somewhere outside. The worst thing is my wife says to me, "Did you really catch him, or are you just telling me?" Yeah, no, I really caught him, lady. Don't worry, I really caught him. And then the next worst thing is that I have a big Yetzer Hara, and I thought it was amusing if I go, wink, wink, like that. Wink, wink. No, they're not amused by that either. It's not a good situation. So you want to try to catch a pigeon? You ever try catching a pigeon? Try catching a bird? Not very easy. Why is it over here that you even have a chance to catch the bird? Because the mother bird is devoting herself to her chicks. We don't take advantage of the bird's devotion. If the mother bird is devoting herself, now I'm going to take advantage of this mother bird who's taking care of her child. That the Torah says is an insensitivity. There's a certain insensitivity that you can't do. You want to go shooting pigeons and hunting pigeons when they're out and out? That's between you and the pigeon. Over here, you got too much of an advantage. The bird is here. The bird doesn't want to run away. You're going to grab the bird. Says the Torah, you can't take advantage. All right, gentlemen, we'll see you tomorrow.